Now, it's been claimed that the dressage champion, who is Britain's joint most decorated female Olympian, whipped the horse more than 24 times in a minute. These allegations led to her withdrawing from the Paris Olympics over what she described as an error of judgement. All right, let's speak now to Roly Owers, Chief Executive of World Horse Welfare. Roly Owers, thanks very much for making the time to speak to us today. We got the news that Charlotte Dujardin was going to pull out of the Olympics yesterday afternoon. We hadn't seen the video at that point. When you saw the video, what did you think?
Good afternoon, Kamali. Clearly, the video is extraordinarily distressing to watch, and what you saw was completely unacceptable. So we welcome the fact that Charlotte has stepped back from the Olympics, and we certainly welcome the quick and swift action of the FEI, the British Equestrian and British Dressage, in taking swift action and investigating this to its full extent.
And Roly, for those of us who don't know what it's like to work with horses, train horses, just tell us, it might be really obvious, but just tell us why what we saw in that video is unacceptable.
Well, the use of the whip is completely unacceptable in the way it was used. It was used with, as you say, 24 times in a minute. The whip does have a role in the training of our horses, but it can be often just a tickle, a touch on the skin, so there's a feeling, and we often call it as an aid, because when we communicate with our horses, we communicate with our hands and our legs, and the whip can be used to support that aid. But what you saw here was not communication, that was just abuse.
And Roly, in the training of horses, are there measures that you know, if a layperson, someone who didn't understand the world of this, saw, would think rose to abuse, that you guys think is perfectly acceptable way of training an animal?
Well, obviously, you know, like any sport and any specialism, there's people who sort of understand the way it works in the detail, and those who, if you're outside, it can sometimes be quite confusing. But there are very clear codes here. The FEI has a code of conduct for the welfare of the horse. British Equestrian has a charter of the horse and has words within that charter that like empathy, care, and respect. And so when we talk about the riding of horses, when we talk about horse sport and involving horses in this way, it's important that we do that responsibly. And at the heart of that, that means putting the horse as the central part of that relationship and treating with respect. And that's unfortunately not what we saw here.
Roly, I'm not sure if you saw my interview earlier with Stefan Wensing, who's the lawyer representing the client who brought this forward. And he says that, according to his client, this is just one example. They don't have other examples on camera, but this was happening all the time.
Well, obviously, I can't comment on that. I didn't actually see the interview. But, you know, of course, there's always going to be some bad apples in any sport. But what's so important is, A, to recognise that actually within horse sport and within the horse sector, there are many, many people, the vast majority of people are doing it the right way. They are treating their horse with respect, compassion and understanding. What we have here is you have rules and regulations to protect those horses. It's one thing having the rules, but it's another thing to enforce them. But it's very easy also to say it's just the regulator's job to enforce them. It's absolutely not. It's a collective responsibility from the riders and the coaches and everyone involved in the sport. So I think that is the lesson from this, is the fact that we can't just say it's someone else's job to do it. It's all of our jobs to do it, and it's really important people wake up to that call.
But Roly, what will strike people as most sort of surprising about this is Charlotte Dujardin. She's the joint most decorated Olympian that this country has. And this is what is now being exposed. I mean, if she's doing that as a champion, what's happening to other horses in another circumstance?
Well, she's clearly called it an error of judgment. And I can only reiterate what I said earlier, is the fact that for horses to compete at the highest level, for horses compete at any level, we need to treat them with respect and compassion and understanding. They're not going to perform. A happy horse will not perform, certainly regularly, at any level. So I think it's very easy to read in something a lot to this situation. I completely accept that. But the reality is that if we do all we can to minimise the risks and maximise the benefits to horses in horse sport, then horses will perform to a very high level and give huge enjoyment to people in doing so. And that's what we've got to get back to. This is to very much placing the horse at the centre of it all.